Since we're in an election year in 2024, there really is not going to be much happening at the federal level in terms of successful legislation, other than just keeping the lights on in Congress for the country. So the real action is happening at the state level. And this is very important for plan sponsors who are employers to really pay attention to what's happening in your state or the states in which you're doing business. Right now, there's nearly 270 different pieces of legislation in 45 different states. And that is a tremendous increase over the last couple of years. So it kind of shows that there's a lot of interest, there's sustained momentum to do something about a variety of issues. And since nothing has happened at the federal level, they're now looking to make it happen at the state level. And just like we've seen with pharmacy benefit managers, PBMs, we're seeing legislation being successfully achieved at the state level in 22 and 2023. And there's now several more bills happening at the state level to address some of the PBM issues and concerns that the plan sponsors have been talking about for a long time. So as a result of all this activity at the state level, it depends partly on whether you're a fully funded plan, you're purchasing insurance from a commercial insurance plan, or if you're a self-funded employer under the ERISA Act. So for those that are purchasing their plans, they're talking about their state, it's even more important because you're going to be directly affected by whatever legislation is passed in your state. So you need to be involved, you need to be engaged, and you also need to better understand what's in or not in your plan as it relates to the benefits that you're trying to provide to your employees as a plan dealing with healthcare. For those employers that are self-funded and under the ERISA legislation, you're looking at multi-state, and so you may be exempt from a lot of this legislation that's happening at the state level for now. But as the states pass legislation and then they see the success and the implications that arise from this in terms of what's being offered in these plans that is different from before, it could be adopted at the federal level. So even though it may not directly affect you in 2025 or even 2026, there's a good chance that you're going to see federal legislation be developed, and that will have an impact on what you can or can't do in your plan in future years. The concept of patient-centered care, or some also call medical home, also whole person care, is also being thrown around today. All these basically emanate from efforts years ago to try and have a better outcome with the patient and a better collaborative care experience of the patient with multiple providers of care. And oncology has been a great example for that over the years, because while you're treating a specific cancer, typically in a target organ, or other conditions that that patient has, like high blood pressure, maybe diabetes, maybe some other neurological issue. And so all that has to be taken into account as they're going through their cancer care journey. So the evolution of care pathways is somewhat related to that as well, not only for the specific cancer care in a particular product or therapy, but also how do you manage these other conditions? If there is high blood pressure or diabetes or even an infection, how is this affecting the primary area of interest, which would be cancer care? So what we're seeing today is a kind of resurgence in better collaborations between primary care or internal medicine with oncologists as the specialists as people are going through a cancer journey. And this can provide better outcomes of care. It provides a better patient experience. So the member of the health plan, from an employer perspective, could have not only better outcomes, but also a better feeling around the care that they were able to get, and hopefully the better outcomes that they achieved as a result of this more patient-centered care in combination of the primary care with the oncology care. There are also some companies that have been developed that provide a concierge type service in this coordination effort between primary care and oncology care. And we would expect to see the same happen in some of the other medical specialties like rheumatology, immunology, cardiology, where we're going to see a lot of these other newer products that specialists will be prescribing and using in therapy while they still need the primary care involvement. So from an employer perspective, there's always been a concern about the escalating cost of care, and are we getting better outcomes for this increased cost that we're paying? And what we've seen is a little bit of a divergence in terms of the types of therapies that we're paying for, but also we're also seeing kind of a mixed bag of outcomes that result from some of these therapies that are being utilized today. It's still early to tell where this is all going to lead, but clearly there's a need by employers to better understand their data, to better understand their plan, what's included, what's not included. Are they, in essence, creating a problem for themselves by the way they've determined their coverage parameters? So start thinking about what the data is telling you about the performance of your plan, not just in economic terms, but also in terms of the clinical care that's being paid for and delivered in your plan based on how you constructed your coverage. And so there's a database out of Indiana that's been developed. There's other sources that have been around for a while as well that are focused around that, getting a handle on your data and the performance of your plan. And this is going to be increasingly important for employers as we see more higher cost therapies coming onto the marketplace. And in the next 5 years, there'll be hundreds of these products, and that will change the way in which care is being delivered, also where it's being delivered in some cases. So it's not just the site of care, which we've been talking about for several years now, but also who is delivering that care. Is it being done in the home as opposed to in a hospital and so forth? So all these parameters should be data points that an employer should be paying attention to. So in the area of high-cost biologics, cell and gene therapies in particular, we've seen a lot of new products and therapies enter onto the marketplace in the last few years. And in the cell therapy area, which are approved by the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, they're really not drugs. These are truly therapies, and mostly involve what you're doing with a laboratory in treating blood. And so these cell therapies are a really interesting area. And we've moved from the early first generation products to now a second generation. And the third generation is now getting ready to come out of clinical trials. So for employers as plan sponsors, you need to understand and appreciate these differences in terms of what this therapy is really all about, how it works, where is it done, where is the patient who's receiving this care, what's the process of the care, how much time out of work they may have, or the caregiver may have to be out of work in order for their family member to have this therapy. So there's all these different issues when we start looking at cell therapy. Similar but different for gene therapy, more earlier stage. We're in the second generation now, but it tends to start out in the hospital, will move into other areas over time. And we're still collecting data and understanding what's the performance of these gene therapies. For cell therapies, they're very well established. And what they're really doing is improving on a reduction of potential side effects, as well as producing better outcomes from these therapies. So it's a really interesting category. It's very expensive still, although the cost is starting to come down now, like most things do. But it's an area that employers really have to understand, spend some time and appreciate what does it mean and how does it affect, again, your benefit coverage and what you're thinking about in terms of the performance of your plan and getting the appropriate data so that you can make decisions. Overall, in thinking about this Community Oncology Alliance meeting, looking at multiple stakeholders and oncology, what we're seeing is an acceleration in change overall. So things that we used to think about, talk about around oncology care, a lot of that is shifting, not only because of the economics, but also because of the technology and the types of therapies that are now available for use in patient care. What that means for the plan sponsor, typically an employer, in the cases that we're talking about, there's a lot of opportunity to really have good coverage that is also very cost effective. And that is a change that we're beginning to see more realized in the real world. We're also seeing more pressures being applied around good oncology care, paying for good oncology care through a whole variety of state legislative efforts. So it's not happening at the federal level, it's happening at the state level. Eventually that will find its way to the federal level. So even if you're a ERISA plan, you have to be paying attention to these trends. These trends not only are happening, there's a lot going on, but they're moving much faster than they have in the past. So this is a very active area and a aspect of your health plan that you as a plan sponsor, if you're an employer, really need to be paying attention to and thinking about what does that mean when we move into cardiology and other medical specialties beyond oncology, because oncology is going to be kind of your canary in the coal mine opportunity to really start thinking differently about your plan and preparing for the future, which is here today. You can get more information about what's going on in the healthcare industry, where we're at today, where we're headed into the future, by listening to the Only Healthcare podcast.